Let's rock.
Go ahead, give me your intro.
Markel Johnson, fresh off of one of the worst performances after one of his better performances, is having to go to face Miami tonight. Is he gonna do it? Who knows? But we're up 52-40 as we record this, and you are going to get a special edition of the Color Commentary Red and White Podcast.
Very well done.
That couldn't have worked out any better.
On the Red and White Podcast, the serialized version. Impromptu on the mic. I like it. All right, folks, we're back. This is going to be a hot mess, just like our basketball season. Hey.
We're by 10 now.
Yeah, we're currently winning. Feels weird because it doesn't look like they're playing very well. It doesn't seem like they're shooting very well, but they're winning. Miami's just not very good, maybe. I don't know.
I think that's safe to assume.
But they're 11-5. Yeah, it's weird.
But what is that 10 comprised of? I didn't look beforehand. We didn't do any research tonight.
Yeah, no idea. I'm not even going to try to pretend. We're winning. That's all that matters.
We are shooting 40% from the field, though. I feel like that's fine, but that's not going to do it most nights. Do you feel 40%?
Not really. I feel like we're a bad shooting team.
We feel streaky, for sure.
Super streaky. I feel like we've been like that for a couple of years now, and I don't know why. Like, I don't know what they're missing. Like, are they just missing ball players? Like, how does Virginia Tech get a bunch of guys that can shoot automatically? Like, I mean,
that Buzz dude.
I guess. Like, I'm getting way ahead of our notes here, but I mean, that's it, man. I really think Keats is learning what he needs or what he wants as far as a roster. And it's been so inconsistent, right? He's like gone for the stars and then, you don't get him, and he's just got a bunch of transfers, and he doesn't really know what he wants, but I think that's maybe starting to change with this next class. But I think his first couple of years, you kind of seen a bit of scrambling. And yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
We can get to it. I mean, I don't know. Should we just jump to the questions first and then come back as?
No, I'm just gonna rattle through. Let me get back to our notes. The Virginia Tech game. We'll just have some quick thoughts. I think VT's pretty good. They're going to be a pest in a tournament. They got guys that can shoot. They got a bunch of guards. They play defense. Just one of those teams that, if we didn't shoot 5 for 30 from 3, we had a chance. But you have a bad night shooting, and they're a good team. You're not going to beat many teams shooting like that, let alone a good team. And yeah, that's about. You can't win if you can't shoot. Right. I mean, I think eventually the stats are going to swing back in our direction. We're going to have a game, and hopefully it's against Carolina or Duke or one of those teams where we hit, 20 of those 30 shots and you just blow somebody out. But right now the stats are going the wrong direction for us, especially from 3-point shooting.
Yeah. I wonder if for Braxton, Braxton's always been a streaky shooter. It's not like he's Scott Wood. He really needs the volume in my mind. Andrew, I wonder if maybe he's just getting kind of adjusted to the ACC level. Could explain it. I mean, he's fine to me. I don't think he's a liability on defense per se.
On cue, Braxton hits a 3.
Now, was it backboarded?
No.
No. I'm gonna have to tweet at him. Which is, we can talk about that today too. I mean,
where are you going with that? I think Braxton's a good shooter, and we went over the stats before, but the reason I say he's a good shooter is it looks like he's got a good form. He's got he could be a good shooter if he was maybe 5 inches taller. He'd be a really good shooter.
He wouldn't be here if he was that tall.
That's probably true too. But that's what you kind of look like, and he'll get through it. You just got to let those guys shoot. I mean, I put out a stat before we started recording that he was 6 for 31 in his last 6 games from 3. I mean, that's like 22% or something like that. It's not very good. And you just got to let him shoot through it, man. And he's got to be out there because you don't have many other options that can hit those shots in volume. I mean, Markelle can hit them, but not in volume like that. If Braxton gets hot, the numbers start swinging back his direction.
Yeah,
he hits 4 or 5 of those a game. It's a completely different story, and that's why he's a 40% 3-point shooter. So
I'd be curious.
It's tough when he's not out there playing well or not shooting well because he's small. And
the other factor is that we have overlooked or not talked about is CJ Bryce is back tonight. He's been shooting about 53% from the field goal percentage for the year. So, I mean, you're talking about aside from DJ Funderbook, who has a 64%, which is probably inflated. I mean, these big guys are just shooting layups practically. I mean, that's been a big issue. I think if you have CJ Bryce, I don't think we lose to Clemson, but apparently Clemson is like the best team in the ACC now. So, Trevor Lawrence must be in the gym, taking charges and picks. And
we'll get into that too, because I have some thoughts on that Clemson game and that what people are.
We should talk about that. Let's just talk about that because who cares? Who gives a shit? That football game was great.
Yeah. So yeah, Clemson loses national title. I mean, LSU was they're a machine. They beat the top 4 teams by a lot of points, right? Or they beat Clemson, Alabama, and LSU by 20 plus each or something like that.
Yeah, they were pretty incredible. I mean, Auburn's the only team that kept it close from what I could tell when I was looking back over it earlier today. It's just here's the thing. I think we said this before. When you get down on a team, you can't just abandon your identity. And I'm sure, LSU could have kind of changed things up, but I think they kind of just adjusted to what they were seeing with Clemson. And then you just saw what was clearly the best team on the field. Remember that they're the best team. And then Joe Burrow just went lights out. I think the takeaway that I had from that game, resounding takeaway from that in the previous game where Clemson was playing Ohio State was you need to have a mobile quarterback. And I'm not talking you don't have to be Lamar Jackson, but Burrow was chewing up yards and keeping the chains moving. And that threat was, you could see the Clemson defense was constantly trying to adjust to either basically say, do I want to let Burrow run or do I want to let Burrow pass? And that's I think we've been kind of saying people are curious about what kind of quarterbacks Tim Beck might go after. I guarantee based on everything I've kind of watched with his old highlights and everything, he's going to highlight in the recruiting process, at least, getting mobile quarterbacks, because you can be Bryce Perkins and still be effective. And then when you luck up and get a guy like Burrow who can throw it, what was he at? He's above 70% completion this year, isn't he? I mean, it's just a complete difference maker when they can throw and they can run, I guess is what I'm saying. And I hope they gave you enough time to click and look for whatever you were looking for.
Yeah. I got nothing. I mean, I started trailing off because I was thinking of a question my buddy sent me this morning. It's Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow 10 years from now, who had the better career?
In the NFL? Or
yeah.
Well, I'm going to say Lamar Jackson because he was smart enough to not go to the Bengals. And you know how I feel about being the top talent and getting drafted by a horrible team. I would feel more that there is a better chance that Baltimore has a better squad around him. So if we assume that he stays with the Bengals the whole time and that's who drafts him, I'm gonna say Lamar. If Joe Burrow gets to leave after 3 years and kind of go wherever he wants, I don't know, man. I'm trying to think, like, has there been a recent quarterback that has been this kind of like this efficient, this dominant, that then goes to the league and is an utter bust? Like, because he doesn't look like a system quarterback. Like, he looks like a tall Russell Wilson to me.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty good analogy. My answer to my buddy was, I mean, it's likely that Lamar Jackson won't be in the league 10 years. I mean, he's the next Michael Vick, right? That's what they're dubbing him. Michael Vick didn't last 10 years.
Oh, my gosh.
I think it's hard for quarterbacks to last 10 years. So I'd go Joe Burrow.
I would say the thing with Lamar is as long as Baltimore's creative, and if Baltimore can just get some guys to catch the ball, I mean, it is a travesty that they lost to the Titans. I love watching what Derrick Henry has been doing, but I mean, I don't think Baltimore is currently built to come from behind. They're built to lead. If they just get some receivers, I think he's going to be amazing. He's like a Konami code, man. He's a cheat code back there. I don't know. Burrow's going to be really interesting to watch. I'm trying to think of who I would maybe compare him to. Like, does he give you kind of like the feeling of like kind of like an Andrew Luck, maybe?
Yeah.
You know, he seems to. They were talking about on the broadcast a lot that he's practically like having a second offensive coordinator down on the field, and I think that I don't know. I probably haven't followed football as deeply as I have, at least on the NFL level, as I have this year because of my incessant daily fantasy sports gambling. But the kind of like the common theme that I picked up over time is like there are certain quarterbacks in the league that when the headset goes out, they can sit there and they can coordinate the offense down the field. Two in particular have been NC State quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and Phillip Rivers. And I think when you have an inherent knowledge of the game and you can just process things at an extremely fast level, it gives you the opportunity to stay in the league a lot longer. So to that point, that's good. I don't know if Lamar is to that level, but then, I mean, you just watch Lamar move and like there was one juke play he was making on a run where he like, I mean, he just like stopped on a dime and the DB or whoever it was just went flying past him. And then like, it was almost like he was laughing and he just jogged out of bounds. Yeah, man, that's a good question. That's a really
he's like a cheat code, man. He's ridiculous, you know. But you know, how long does that last? Right? Is that gonna?
The thing is, too, is I mean,
I don't think it lasts 10 years.
Is Joe Burrow really this good, or is this just like a freak, you know, season? Right? I mean, last year he was just mediocre, right? I mean, is this?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell when you have, you know, good quarterbacks with superior talent all around them, right? I don't know if you necessarily learn a whole lot about them as opposed to like having a Phillip Rivers at NC State and you're like, this guy single-handedly carried this team. And same thing with Russell Wilson. So, you know, I don't think we'll really know. And I really don't want to spend too much more time talking about Joe Burrow.
No. We should talk about this a little bit because I think someone had tweeted, I don't know if it was you or maybe it was someone else, that you know, they like dream of seeing NC State eventually at like a national championship stage. And I was watching all the talent on the field and I was like, if NC State just somehow lucked their way into getting to this final and they played a team like LSU, like, I mean, we'd lose like by 60, you know, like it's just like a completely different athlete on the field there. It's almost amazing that we didn't lose by 80 to Clemson. You know, like with all our injuries.
Yeah, they pull off the throttle. But if you think back, State has, and this is probably what gives everybody hope, to like just the glimmer of hope, which is all you really need, even to get to the playoff. Is you think back to, you know, Mario Williams years and then the Phillip Rivers years. I mean, if those two overlap by, I think they were 2 years apart or a year and a half apart or whatever it was.
Oh
yeah, if, you know, if those overlap a little bit differently, then, you know, who knows what you're talking about. Those are the two, you know, one of the best offenses we've ever had and one of the best defenses we ever had. And, you know, still might not have been good enough to beat a team like LSU this year, who was, I mean, just insane. But any other year that gives you a chance. And that's what I think people are clinging to.
Yeah.
With that said, you can't have your senior cornerback transferring. So Nick McLeod announced he's transferring. I assume there's some sort of story there with him and, maybe Barlow being let go and, some of that thing. But your next, I'll have two sides on this thing. It's like you can't keep losing your seniors, right? And I'll let you pass on Lias and some of these other guys who are in theory not going to play, right? But Nick McLeod's your best corner, and I can just hear the but we're young excuses again, right? And that's just it just pains me to like even think about that, right? It's not what. So that's the part that really bothers me. But then, as somebody else put it, being the best corner on an NC State team last few years is like being the top scholar in the UNC basketball team. There's not a whole lot of competition, and I was like, that's pretty much the good way to put it.
Man, those walk-ons work hard.
Yeah, I mean,
here's the thing.
I get it.
Did I know he was better, than it looks, but did you think Nick McLeod was like that good?
No, it's that's such an open-ended. Was he good for us? I mean, I guess.
Well, my thing is where is he going to transfer? Like, he's not, to me, he's not going to transfer up, right? I mean, it's not like he's going to end up at LSU or Florida or Ohio State or South Carolina, right? He's a South Carolina kid. Is he going to end up at South Carolina? No. So
I mean, he could. He doesn't have to be your primary corner.
I mean, okay. Right? So if he ends up there and he's not your starter, then who gives a shit? I mean,
well, he not your starter, but he's not your main guy. He's not going to be your top corner. But maybe you put him on the weak side or whatever. But I think he's good enough and he's played enough that if he's healthy, he can be. But it's not fooling anybody. He's not like he was David Amerson picking off balls or any of these other guys that, teams wouldn't just throw at. There's you have these corners where teams will just completely avoid throwing them because there's no chance that guy's getting open. And it's not like he was that.
Yeah.
I think what you're looking at now is that you have a new cornerbacks coach, a new DBs coach. Now he gets a blank slate. And you got a bunch of, in theory, better athletes on the roster now. Shy Battle and Dunlap didn't leave. Tayshaun Smith and some of these guys that they really like and are supposedly taller, better athletes than Devin Daniels. Then he gets a blank slate, and so I think that's that's kind of intimidating for a senior, right? Because you don't have your spot given to you.
Yeah, I mean
now you got to come in and I think it's good. I think it's good. It's maybe addition by subtraction. What always got me about McLeod is that he was arrogant as hell, and you could tell every time a quarterback overthrew somebody, like 10 yards and just completely no chance to catch a pass, he jumps up and like waves his arms like, yeah, don't throw it my way. And it drove me crazy. I hate when quarterbacks do that, but he did it all the time.
Okay. So look, I'm never going to fault a cornerback for not living in reality because you get burned constantly and you just have to have a completely different ego / mindset to survive that position. I think my thing is, I mean, we haven't had a dominant corner in a while. It's disappointing when you're a senior and a new cornerback coach comes in and says basically it's open competition, and then you're just like, oh, I'm going to bounce. I don't want that kind of attitude on the team. Now, I could understand if you really had a strong connection with Barlow and he didn't, wasn't happy with Gibson and just didn't want to be there. That's fine. It's better to leave if you're not fully bought in, you're not comfortable with the coaches, whatever. I would just also say, like, when he came in for that Clemson game, he did not look 100% to me. And if the medical staff said he was cleared to play and he played the way he did, that's where I say, like, okay, if anything, he's going to move laterally or down a level, or I mean, to me, it's like if you lose a guy that's not bought in, then you're not losing out, despite him being a senior. You just need
Right.
Chris Ingram to stay healthy now. Tayshaun Smith. You need to go see if you can find a grad transfer, just something to add a little bit of depth back there. But I mean, the reality is, like, if you lose your starting two corners, you're usually done anyways. And
the secondary has just been the worst part of the NC State football team, pretty much under Dave Doran. And so, losing, air quotes, your best corner, whatever. Maybe get some other guys in there. Maybe you find something else. I mean, it's not ideal just from an experience standpoint, but in reality, I'm not too bad about it. I mean, to be honest,
let's be real, right? Doran clearly sensed that he needed to go a different direction. He allowed Gibson to run it, and Gibson went and got his guys. And at least the guys he's brought in have coached consistently really good players and brought in good players. And George Barlow had come from Vanderbilt and had like a little bit of buzz about him, but at the same time, like, he's been here for a while and we've seen what he did. And It's just time to move on. And if you don't want to be here, then, leave. It's totally fine.
I wonder if McLeod was one of those guys that Peyton Wilson was talking about at the end of the season when he was like, if you don't want to put in the work, then get the hell out. Wow. And I mean, it's a true statement. Obviously, there was guys there that weren't putting the effort in, and that's why he said it. And
you better be out.
He's got his own issues. I was about to say. Don't run into cop cars. Yeah. Don't get tackled by a squad car.
I could imagine being so drunk and being Peyton Wilson and being like, I can tackle that car.
Yeah. He's big, man. I saw him in person.
We had boots on the ground.
Like, he's tall.
What restaurant were you at?
Angus Barn, yeah. Yeah, he's a big boy. Devin Carter's enormous too. I couldn't believe that. It's like, holy
Devin Carter looks big on TV, so I'm not surprised.
He does.
He looks built and he looks tall. I mean, he's someone I'm actually really excited about Devin Carter in the future. And I think I'm also a big proponent of getting the speed back on offense. So I'm hoping if we got some fast wide receivers this year, a guy like Devin Carter, a guy like Emeka, dude, these guys can't alley-oop for. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
They're up 20. Let it go.
When you're up 20, you got to exclamate. Okay, you got to. I don't know. It looks like they're putting in some walk-ons. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like that. This is the worst part of the year, in my opinion, because it's like spring practice hasn't started. So it's like, and then exactly. You just saw a championship team, so you like saw what really, really good football looked like, probably.
Right.
Man, but hopefully basketball like just turns it up, or maybe I'll start streaming women's basketball. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. Speaking of basketball, Cam Buchanan asks, if we don't finish in the top 4 of the ACC in basketball this year with a veteran squad in an overall down ACC, when will we? I think I don't have an answer to that, but I think that is what is so frustrating about NC State sports over the last 20 years, is all these opportunities where you could step up and be that team, and we've just stayed right in the goddamn middle, and it drives me crazy. So I don't know. I mean,
are we?
Hopefully, Keats has figured out what kind of talent he needs, and he's bringing it in. And we don't have this problem anymore. But when you look at a team like Louisville last year, they weren't very good. They were middle of the pack, right? And now they're really good this year. Like that's a quick turnaround. Like Chris Mack knows what he wants out of basketball players and knows what he needs on his roster.
It's a quick turnaround because he inherited like an A+ situation. Like,
well, that's fine, but he went from middle of the pack to top 5 in the country. I mean, there's a difference in he's brought in some talent already that is making a difference for that team. And so I think he's got that figured out, which Keats
I would just
not.
say, like, I always like to hedge a little bit on it's January and, what the top, he's, they're top 10 right now, top 11, top 10. And, like, let's see it play out.
Yeah.
Everyone can look hot at the beginning of the year and then phase out. I did really appreciate the announcer to this Miami State game saying that Gonzaga, whoever watches them.
Yeah. Yes. My dad loves it.
I mean, I wish I could stream it, I guess. Yeah, I mean, my thing is, I was just gonna say, like, are we even that veteran of a team right now?
CJ Bryce, Markel.
So
that's about it. Braxton's a junior.
And what I was gonna say is, like, okay, so we just list off 3 guys. One of those has been out for the last 4 games, right? Like, how do we feel if we are? What's our record right now?
11-5, about 12-5.
So if we're 13-5, or no, 13-3, right? Like, say we pick up the Clemson game and pick up the Virginia Tech game, is anyone complaining at all? Right?
Yeah.
I would just say kind of let it play out. I'd like to see what we look like full strength for a couple games here. With hopefully CJ can get back from whatever happened to him. Like, let's not get into it, but I don't know. I'm not. I go in with pretty. I didn't have top 4 expectations anyways this year. Like, I just think it's really hard to be a top 4 ACC team if the ACC is good. And then, here's the thing: get healthy, and the rest of the ACC looks like trash outside of a couple teams. So you have the opportunity to go on a big run here.
Yeah, I don't know what I expected. I expected better. I think we talked about this last week. I expected Markel to be the second half of last year Markel as opposed to whatever we've seen so far. And that's part of it, because if you have him and you don't lose CJ Bryce to some fluke thing, then maybe your record's a little bit different, but it's just going to be a big, what you want to get, you want the double bye. So whatever you need to get into the double bye in the ACC tournament, that's what you want. You need to get there. And Scotty O asks, also, can we acknowledge that Clemson's win over Duke USC shows that our loss to Clemson wasn't bad, as fans overreact with negativity? Now, see, I'm going to disagree with that. It's still a bad loss just because they beat Duke and Carolina. When it comes to the end of the year, it's still likely, unless they for somehow keep this hot streak up, it's likely that it's going to be counted as a bad loss. They're 9-7 right now. They've lost to Colorado, Minnesota, South Carolina, FSU, Yale, and Miami, who we just beat by 20. Their best win was a 2-point win over TCU. This is before the streak. So it was still a bad loss. I mean, it's a weird year in the ACC. I get it, but Clemson's not a very good basketball team, and that's just because they've won these 2 games. I don't think that changes.
They're 3-3 in the ACC. It is. I think it is more impressive to me beating Duke. UNC is clearly struggling right now, and if we get this UNC team and they're as hurt as they are when we get to play them, and we win, then I will be like, well, they suck. And if we lose, I will be very worried, because our loss to Georgia Tech looks bad in my mind. The way we played at Clemson was really bad. And if you shovel any more losses from Pitt, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Wake Forest, like, those guys are the bottom. And by the way, we're just 1 up from those guys. So we're not playing well. And this is the complaint that we had in football, right? Which was, outside of Clemson, the rest of our division was up for grabs. And then we cellar dwellered, right? Yeah. And then you look at it right now and you're like, Jesus Christ, we're doing it again in basketball. And we don't really have a good excuse. I mean, maybe it's not fair to think, okay, Markel's going to be NIT Markel. Maybe that's just not a fair expectation to have. But at the same time, like, you can't have the Markel that shows up for Clemson, the one that shows up for Virginia Tech. Like, people are praising what he did against Notre Dame. Well, Notre Dame sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. This is kind of off on tangent. I think Brad Brownell is a good coach. I mean, he's won at the lower levels. He must be a really bad recruiter because you would think you'd be able to get some talent to Clemson. I mean, ride the wave of the football program and just cash in on that hype. You would think that he would be able to get some talent. He must be a really bad recruiter, or his staff.
Basic white dude. He seems boring. He doesn't play fun basketball. Like he is he's Tony Bennett without having that salt and pepper good look. Nice. That was a line just for my girlfriend when she listens to this tomorrow. And I just I mean, if Clemson got like the equivalent of what Bennett brings in at UVA, I think Brunel would be better, but he just isn't that. I mean, man, he's the only reason he's here is because Will Wade isn't there. That's
such a weird story.
I mean,
too.
Man,
damn, Virginia lost
really?
Again.
Oh my gosh. My
FSU
friend, her grandfather, I think, has been keeping the stats for like 20 or 30 or 40 years for UVA, like at their games. So this must be devastating for their household. And you know what? I'm not sad because you guys won a championship.
Yeah, like who cares? I mean, I'd still be riding high off the national championship last year. You don't expect Tony Bennett to bring in the 5 stars. He'll probably coach these guys up in 3 years. They'll all be seniors, and they'll be in the Final Four again.
Like UVA's lost to what was it, UMBC, and then following up with a national title. Yeah. Like that's I always like step back. I'm like, that's the NC State story that just never gets. You know what I mean? Like this never gets completed. We've accomplished the first part of the crap situation. It would be very exciting when Kevin Keats takes us to the promised land, and it's going to be this year. I'm calling it right now.
I like it. I like the early call your shot. Let me try this again. How apocalyptic? They spelled it wrong. It threw me off. Apoplectic. It's spelled apocalyptic. Should the fan base be?
Okay.
Apoplectic. Okay. Should the fan base?
I was thinking apocalyptic.
Something else. Yeah, me too. Should the fan base be if the team doesn't split with the holes this year?
Let me take this. If Cole Anthony's out, we should clean their clocks. If they somehow get healthy and get him back, I'd still be disappointed with a split, man. Like, go out and beat their asses. I'm tired of UNC basketball is really bad this year. Like, I don't even know if Cole Anthony should really be that important in that equation. As long as Markelle goes and has a decent game, that's fine. I guess I would love. Let me ask you like this: would you rather have the win at home or have the win at the Dean Dome if you split?
I mean, at home, I guess, right? At least you have an excuse to lose on the road.
I love seeing that silent fan base, though, when we win there.
That's true, man. I love seeing them empty out. 10 minutes left.
Can I get those spritzers, man?
Yeah. I just learned a new word, apoplexy. Apoplexy is bleeding within internal organs and the accompanying symptoms.
Well, that doesn't define our football team.
Yeah, in this podcast.
What a truth.
Apologize for bastardizing that one. Matt Murphy asked, what was the bigger recruiting whiff for Kevin Keats, losing Sadiq Bey after he signed his letter of intent, or not having a backup plan for the possibility of Jalen LeCue not making it to Raleigh? And your backup plan, I'll add to that, not having a backup plan for Sebron not being academically eligible. I mean, all three of those are not good. And that's what they contribute to my theory that Kevin Keats is trying to figure out roster management.
I guess so. What Sebron was basically going to be what the equivalent of Andrew. No, Andrew is more of a forward, right? I guess he's like a taller Bryce.
He's supposed to be a point guard. Yeah. I mean, he's supposed to be a guard, point guard, ball handler.
Well, the thing with Sebron is like, I will take a chance on a guy where you're like 90% sure he's not going to qualify the first year, but you feel confident you will get him for the remaining years. That's worth the risk, I think. LeCue, man, either they just thought he was really good but not that good, or they just made a mistake there. I mean, maybe you say, look, okay, I've got 2 point guards right now. I got Markel who's playing super hot, and if Markel leaves, I want to try to replace him with a super hot potential guy. And then worst case scenario, I've got I feel like I have to ask this every week. Who was the guy that transferred? That was our point guard. Blake Harris.
Blake Harris.
Man. I just think it was like the worst way it could have gone. You still don't want to be relying on Darian Sebron, or you know what I mean? Like,
right.
You want your studs to play. I'll forgive him. I mean, Sadiq Bey. Okay, first off, haven't seen Sadiq play at all this year.
He's only averaging 18
points. Yeah, but who's he playing? I mean, he's with Villanova, right? I mean, Villanova's really good.
Yeah.
And you know what? He had 2 points against Ohio State.
He had 33
but
against Georgetown.
Isn't Georgetown on a big slump right now too? Aren't they bad? Oh, they're 11-6.
Apparently, he was posterizing Omer
Yurtseven. We've seen that happen. I guess like the thing is like I guess it's I mean, whose fault is that?
I can't fault him for Sadiq Bey. Yeah, I can't fault him for Sadiq Bey because he had at the time Sasha Kalea-Jones, and you don't realize that guy's just going to get kicked off the team and never see the floor. So I think that's that's part of it.
What's even happened to him?
So I think the LeCue thing is a bigger mistake.
I'm looking right now. I don't even know how to spell his name.
So while he's looking that up, I'll ask.
It's hard.
Sacha. I don't know how to spell the last one. Google should tell you. Pack Eddie asks, gun to your head, do we make the tournament this year? Gun to my head, do we make the tournament? I would say yeah. Depending on if we get shafted, or let's say, assuming we don't get shafted like last year, I think this team will win enough to make the tournament. Although I did see on bracketology, which drives me crazy because they've been doing this for game one, and they put their bracket out, and it's just it's stupid. But yeah, it was updated that we were out, and I don't think that'll last. We were like a 4 seed 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or something like that. I mean, so it's all over the place. Yeah, I don't know. I'd say yes.
Interesting. You know what? I was looking at the UK website for SKJ here, and they list the Twitter handles for their players. That's interesting. Huh.
Oh, that would be bad.
It's very bad from what I saw today from some people posting at, or from a few weeks back posting at Nick McLeod. Let me just go on. Let me just say this real quick. Do not
do your thing.
Tweet negative things at our players. Don't critique our players. Don't even bother trying to critique our coaches, because if they do ever respond to you, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well from a public, like a PR image for us. It's probably not going to go well for you. Like, I don't understand trying to dunk on our players. At the same time, interactions with players do not lead to players leaving the school. At least one interaction. I can think of a guy like Kyle Bambard that weathered a horrible storm of shit that came at him, and he stuck through it. And I mean, like, more power to him, man. That guy must have like mental fortitude off the field. That's insane to get through that. But I don't understand why anyone would try to go critique our players. If you want to tweet at players, and you can, ask them if you can DM them, or, try to have a friendly public discourse with them, that's fine. But like, these guys take it hard. I remember one time I was like going through the roster after a spring or summer, whenever they changed like all the player weights and everything. And I made a file that showed like who gained, who lost, and I was talking about it. And like Tyson Chandler reached out to me and was like really upset with something I had said, and I had poorly phrased it, and then he had misinterpreted it, and so he was very upset about it, and he said something to me, and I reached back out to him and I said, hey, like, I think I didn't communicate this properly. Like, I'm just saying, I'm impressed for like a guy of your size to be able to move at this. Like, I can barely move at my size, and I'm 180 pounds at the time. Like, these guys take stuff seriously, and they got a lot of stuff going on. And if a guy just lost his favorite coach, for example, like, you don't need to get in there and try to dunk on him. I don't see what you're trying to do as a fan at that point. What outcome are you looking for him to be like, yeah, Barlow was crap, and you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, they were putting us in a cover 2 shell, and that we should have never done that. Like, no, you're not going to get that interaction. So don't do it. Like, either congratulate the players or just keep it to yourself, man. Keep it on the boards, or if you're going to talk about it on Twitter, like, talk about it on Twitter, but just leave our players out of it, man. Like, don't at them. It's just a bad look. And then flip on that. Like, I'm getting really tired of seeing people say that public discourse about teams leads to transfers. Like, I 100% disagree. If Nick McLeod transfers to an SEC school, for example, he will probably get more vitriol there than he would probably get here. I mean, that's you're allowed to express yourself online. Get over it, people. Like, it's not what it doesn't have the effect that I think you think it has.
It's a tired conversation, and it's a lazy conversation. And yeah, I'm with you. I think it's ridiculous because we're pale in comparison to any other fan bases that are serious about football. Sasha Clay Jones is currently playing, averaging 9 points, 3 rebounds for BC Kalev Kramo of the Estonia League. Man, third place BC Kalev.
Is that
Kramo.
where Elian Eftimov was from? Or God, what was the guy's name? Oh, he used to wear a leather jacket.
Eftimov was from Eftimov's from Bulgaria.
Who was Eftimov? That's what it was. Okay, I was thinking Eftimov was like the taller forward, maybe hit a little bit of a good 3-ball stroke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
He is 2020 draft eligible.
Gonna do a little bit more, bud. That's frustrating, man. I did Sadiq Bey really leave because we took Sasha, or did we get Sasha because we were worried about Sadiq?
I have no idea. I don't pay attention to basketball recruiting that closely. We'd have to ask somebody who
they're all getting paid under the table. Everyone's playing illegally. Yada.
Yeah, right. It's under the table and on camera if you're
what?
Odell Beckham.
Oh my gosh, right. That's got to get some like, if that doesn't result in some kind of penalty. What?
I don't know.
Mean, what?
You know what's happening. Just you didn't expect it to happen on the field.
On camera. Like, I mean, I expect OBJ to be like, yeah, that was Monopoly money, bros. That was, oh my God. I will say my favorite part of the sports weekend was Marshawn Lynch giving a post presser for, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half, and basically telling all these young athletes what they need to hear. And I think at the time was, at least on Twitter, it was like criticized because like white people on the East Coast have no idea what he was saying. But he basically, I'll paraphrase it as he said, you gotta take care of your. He said you gotta take care of your bread, take care of your mentals, take care of your chicken, and I was watching, I was like, I feel like I understand what he's saying. It's like, take care of your finances, take care of your body, take care of your mental health, because if you want to retire like I did and have a good time afterwards and like not be sweating everything, you got to be smart up front. And I was like, damn, I was like, he probably just reached so many people by saying it in a way that makes no sense to most people. You know what I mean? But like, I was watching, I was like, that's like, I want to make that like my life philosophy. Like, man, take care of your body, take care of your mentals, take care of your chicken, man. I just had some barbecue chicken tonight. I feel like I'm following the plan. So thanks, Marshawn.
The Marshawn plan for life success. Speaking of football, we got some questions. Which of the QBs on the roster are currently in the transfer portal do you think we believe can run the Tim Beck's offense? I'll give you mine, Felipe Franks. Well, Felipe Franks is going to Kansas, first of all.
Is it settled?
I think that's all but given. It's not, but I think it's pretty understand. And then I asked my buddy, CT's big Florida fan and a big NC State troll, so I naturally asked him. And I used to always joke about him with Felipe Franks because he was really bad. Strong arm, good athlete, can't read defenses, bad at going through progressions. Gators were better with a 2-star quarterback who hadn't started a game since Pop Warner. So that tells you how much Felipe Franks.
Wait, is that really true about their quarterback? He hadn't.
It is true. Yeah.
How do you get?
Yeah, he was a high school backup. I forgot the story about it. I remember it happening.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? We're gonna have our own version of that because one of our fast wide receivers was a punter his junior year because there was like a senior ahead of him on the depth chart. And then they finally let him play wide receiver this year and he like averaged, like 20 yards a catch or something like that. I mean, which is crazy. And I was like, all I could think of though, I was like, fake punts. I know we got the Kyle Bambard again. Here it is.
Right.
I can see. Guys, he could run a fake punch.
Yeah. I looked through the transfer portal just to see, and there's like 2 names that I would even recognize. There's a couple, but I can't imagine any of these guys are better than what we have. Other than KJ Costello, the Stanford quarterback, who's a grad transfer. But he's a pro-style quarterback, whatever that is these days. There's just nobody on this list that's like, ooh, let's get that. That makes sense, or that's somebody that we could land. I mean, it's just a bunch of, unless we're talking FCS guys that maybe aren't on this list, and maybe get a high FCS
one
guy.
Of the best cases for us, if it ever happened, was if the Clemson backup quarterback was available. Yeah,
Bryce, right?
I mean, I would just say this, like, I'm not one to tell someone to like not follow recruiting for a moment, but like I would just not bother. Like, no one had Jacoby Brissett on their radar. No one had Ryan Finley on their radar. Like, I'll trust Dave and Beck to kind of go find somebody. And I don't think you have. I mean, my thing is like, I don't think you have to be that good of a throwing quarterback to be effective anymore. We just need, I would just, if we could get someone that is like, in that 220, 230 range, that is basically like a running back who can throw decently, that's fine, for 1 year if needed. But Tim Beck could also get in there and be like, hey man, we got plenty of talent here. It just wasn't used right. And
Kentucky won 9 or 10 games with a wide receiver as quarterback.
It's possible.
Like, that guy threw 4 passes against Louisville, and they won that game. 4 passes. 4. He ran for 280 yards or something like that, but he threw 4 passes. So I have no idea who's going to be. I guess Anthony Brown, the Boston College quarterback.
I would take him.
He's a dual threat guy.
I don't even care if he's good for 5 games.
Yeah, he played well against us.
I would take him.
Yeah, he doesn't have any knees. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this list is, I've seen some better lists before, and
I think
this is
Anthony Brown. If I remember correctly, I thought he was like averaging like 11 yards a completion or something like that. Or no, it was a per attempt. Before he got hurt. Yeah, I mean, he's.
We lose that game up there, or lose that game against them. Was it 2 years ago when he first got hurt? If he doesn't get hurt. Like, if he plays that game or he finishes that game,
don't start triggering me, man. There's a couple games like that. If you go back and like really dig into it, where you're like, oh man, you have Nyheim Hines bailing you out with a last minute punt return, or a big run, or you got Chubb making a that's like NC State at its core is just we are so thin. I feel like. In like basketball is a good example, right? You lose CJ Bryce and it's just like, are we even functional? You know what I mean?
Right.
I hope that Tim Beck though like comes in and just says like, no, dude, we got the goods right here. We got 4 guys here that I could work with, and I mean this is his thing, man. He knows
Yeah.
quarterbacks, so if we don't bring anyone in, I would say that's a thumbs up. And if he brings someone in, then it's like okay, yeah, we did have bad quarterbacks.
If he brings somebody in, I really want to question everything scouting that we've had for the quarterback position over the last, I don't know how many years. Because, yeah, I mean, Jacoby was a transfer, Finley was a transfer, and then you have these 4 guys, and they're just young. I get it. I think there's got to be talent in there. The odds say that one of them is good enough to play, maybe a bit young, but I gotta think Tim Beck sees one of them like, oh, that guy's got
man.
something, right?
The quarterback guru himself, Matt Canada, is gonna go and save the day at Pittsburgh now, and he's the only guy who knew quarterbacks that we've ever had.
Matt Canada is going to forget that Jay Sam's on that roster at least one game next year, and it's going to everybody
if his
in Raleigh
first act isn't to promote Jay Sam to quarterback, he has failed me because Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph, or whatever his name, they are garbage. They are so bad, and again, I mean, don't ever play those guys in DFS, guys. I'll tell you that right now. I did. Gosh, when I saw that, I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, he's not even known for quarterbacks." Very weird,
isn't it?
I just.
All right, here's the next question for you. Answer this one under 30 seconds. If Trent Penix runs a 4.3 40, why do you think he didn't get more touches and have a significant impact with his size, speed? Would you see him move to the H-back potentially?
That's my thing. To me, it just comes down to shuttle, and he looks good in a straight line. I thought he was going to be a safety. I think he could be a linebacker. I think he's got better utility.
Agreed.
People are just way too quick to label people as H-backs, and I think we got spoiled by J Sam, and you saw like what an incredible H-back can be, basically. And let's just see. Maybe Beck finds a way.
If we didn't have the linebacker core we have right now, I bet you Penix would have been moved to linebacker. I feel like right now they're so deep it wouldn't make any sense.
Like,
I don't know if he's shifty enough.
It would be interesting to see because he is fast, and if he's just a trick play magician, then that's fine too.
Yeah. Do you anticipate any position changes to fit the scheme and make best use of the personnel?
On offense or defense?
Doesn't say. Either or. I can't. I think you have to look at that question and look at what are the glaring holes. And I mean, the main question will be: do you keep Cecil Powell on?
He'll stay there.
Defense or offense, whatever. He switched to offense, or does he go back to defense?
The reason they brought in all that speed on offense was
too.
to make up for that. I think his future is on the defensive side of the ball. I'm just trying to think if anyone in like the secondary or like the linebackers could shift.
Tight end, maybe. And you never know which defensive guy could go to the offensive line or vice versa. You see that happen a lot. But tight end is probably the one where we don't have the most depth, I would imagine. Unless there's a secret quarterback hiding on our roster somewhere.
Parham, maybe.
Skullthorpe is actually
maybe just Parham doesn't get put into the blocking role, and maybe they just let him be kind of a pass, or maybe he becomes like a real H-back. He might be an interesting one. It's tough, man. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think this, from a high-level perspective, Tim Beck's not going to come in and like massively change the scheme, in my opinion. I think you're going to go back to a run-heavy kind of scheme that's going to try to optimize and put the wide receivers in a good spot. I mean, I guess he could surprise us and go more spread, but it doesn't seem like that makes sense year one with personnel.
No, I think with personnel, it's going to be how can I get my running backs in position in open space? right? I think you'll probably see a mix of running from some power formations and take some mix of running from the spread. And I think that's what you want to see, because if you're a State fan, you have 3 running backs, and that's what you need to lean into, because those guys are good. And I think
I
there's
would love to
potential
see
there.
them try to get Houston
I don't
more one-on-one kind of matchups, or I'd love to see like 2 backs in the field. I was watching, I think maybe Kansas City was doing that this weekend, or maybe it was another team, but I like that look. You don't see it very often. I would say wait.
Here's my question. About the Chiefs. Everybody seems to be 20 yards downfield,
Andy
and
Reid, man.
somebody's open. Is their offensive line that good, or is it some sort of like they just run in 4 streaks?
No,
Hey,
I mean, here's the thing. The best way to be successful in the NFL is to get a really good rookie quarterback, so you can just spend out like crazy everywhere else. Kelsey, there's hardly any. I mean, there's no one like Kelsey. I mean, Kittle is kind of in that realm, but I mean, not even close to what he can do in the air. And then Hill, I mean, Hardiman, even Watkins, even though he's been garbage this year. And then, I mean, they have so much speed. And Andy Reid is really damn good at scheming. He is so fun. It's so fun to watch. I mean, I always liked watching what they did at Philly, even though I hate Philadelphia and the people there. Andy Reid was fun to watch on offense. I think he just, what's crazy about that game, if you go back and watch like, the first few drives while the Texans were just beating them up, dudes were just dropping passes. And if you look at them, they're like 5 or 6 yards separated from everybody. That game should have been 51-0 from the start. In reality, they're fun to watch. I'm just glad that we have something fun to watch. Like, I was going to kill myself if I had to watch Bill O'Brien and Aaron Rodgers. And okay, the Texans are kind of fun because I mean Derrick Henry is awesome to watch, but man, it's like this Super Bowl run could have been so fun. Like, you could have had Chiefs and Ravens. You could have had Breeze. I think you could have had Breeze versus Wilson at least. And now it's like you're getting like a bunch of cloud and the dust types, and then just like a complete, if the Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl, it's a disaster. That's our NFL pod. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah. Back to the Wolfpack. What do you think their pitch is at Junior Day?
Is this targeted to Will Shipley or to all of the juniors? I would say the pitch is obviously that season was a freak accident from an injury perspective. And we've also seen how the game is evolving in this league, and we've made changes to match that and to get ahead of it. And we're looking forward to, starting over with these guys, but also like, hey, you've got an opportunity to make an impact here right away. By the time you get here, everything's going to be settled with Beck. Everything's going to be settled with Gibbs. And, you're just going to be that final piece of the puzzle. That's what I would say to everyone. And then I would pull Will Shipley aside and be like, your family will disown you if you go anywhere else.
Yeah, they gotta land the guy. What is it with the perception that maybe it's not even perception? State doesn't do well historically with legacy players. I mean, they just haven't. And the perception is with Carolina, like you hear always Carolina legacy, he's going to Carolina. Like, it seems like a very weird disconnect there.
I would say that especially in the NFL, when our players go to the league, they're successful and they're there for a long time, and their roots get spread all over the country, and they don't stick around in North Carolina the whole time like all these washouts from UNC do. I'd also say having, we have to understand that the marketing power of UNC's basketball is important. And it's just, there's some weird effect that color of blue has on people. I can't say anything more than that. I think also it's just like who have we really missed that was critical? People are going to talk about Downs. Like we don't even know if he's.
Yeah,
I don't even know if he's that good, and it's like I don't have the data yet on his child.
I don't think we've had the history of having. Yeah, like I don't think we've had the history there. So now, I don't remember if it was O'Brien or Amato that emphasized bringing back the old players and all that. Like, I wonder if that plays a part in it, right? And then you get your old players to really buy into the program and really get them to sell it, and then maybe the next generation over the next 5-10 years at most, and you'll start to see Ray Robinson's kid or something, something like that. I don't.
Russell's kids.
Maybe you start to see those guys.
Look, we'll take
Russell's
one child from Russell, and then the other can go to Wisconsin and wherever Ciara went, and then that's fine.
He's got to have twins.
I think
he's got to have twins.
Awesome. I mean, here's the thing, man. We had a poorly run athletic department for a long ass time, and you know what? It is it's highly probable that the outreach was inconsistent, and they probably did a better job of connecting with former basketball players than they did with their football program. And I don't want to rehash anything else from like the Fowler and prior era. But I just remember, it must have been like 2009, 2007. I can't remember when it was. I was looking at it, but I was looking at, it was like some newsletter or like something for the athletics department. And our version of it was so embarrassing looking. Like it looked like it was practically wingdings on there. And then I looked at like Georgia Tech, and it was like the most professional looking document I'd ever seen. And I was just like, this is our problem. Like, we're not run by smart, educated people running a business. We're run by good old boys.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's a big problem, or had been a big problem. All right, 30-second answer. What are the chances Leary starts at QB this fall?
4 to 1.
I think he's.
I mean, how many other quarterbacks are there? 4 to 1, 3 to 1. He's got the edge.
Yeah.
I mean, it has me super worried, but it's who else is it going to be at this point?
Yeah, I'm not super worried. I don't know why. I'm giving it the youth excuse. It's hard for me to fathom that they're all that bad, and that's probably why. Like, I'm just playing the odds here that these kids they're highly rated for a reason, and
if now they get some experience. Expectations, and like it'll be fine. And like my expectations are like just be like 60% completion. Like that will be monumental. Like just get that part of your game under control.
Is there anything in the last decade that surprised you with NC State football?
Beating Florida State. The Mike Glennon year. I was living in Atlanta. Yeah. I was in Atlanta, and I was telling these guys that we were all out to dinner. I think it was a birthday party actually. And I was like, yeah, man, I was like, keep an eye. I was like, if we can keep it close, if we can get through halftime, I was like, I guarantee that Jimbo is going to go full on Jimbo and do all the wrong things as this game goes on. And we switched bars. We went to another place to go play like indoor bocce. And my buddy is like, dude, look at the score. And I looked up and I was like, here it goes. And so we watched the game for like 30 or 40 minutes. And that final play, like it was awesome. And that's my favorite like football moment of that time frame, other than maybe the Clemson win, like out of nowhere against Sammy Watkins and that dude who's not even in the league anymore. Amerson was wild in that game, and Tobias Palmer took a screen pass to the house. That's what I remember from that.
Taj Boyd.
Yeah, old TB.
I can't. I mean, there's been some good moments. Maybe the fact that we blew 2 kicks against Clemson. I wonder how that would have changed the trajectory of things. I don't know if that necessarily surprised me. I think the last decade has been pretty much on par with NC State historically. Yeah, weird. Maybe Brian Kelly throwing it 36 times in a hurricane. That's probably the weird one. That's
That's the
probably the most
craziest game
surprising.
I've been at. Driving down for that,
Yeah.
and I met I met up with Matt Purdy at a bar. UN Wolfpack, I think, is what his handle is. But like halfway, we were at halftime, and I was like, dude, are you at a bar or something like that? Like, I got to get out of this weather, because if we lose, I'm not sitting here for the second half with whatever further national
Yeah.
emergency is about to happen here. And driving down Glenwood after that game, and like, oh my god, man, that was I thought I was gonna die 5 times that night, but what a win.
There's a couple other questions. Let's see. I think they're kind of related. Cam asks, thoughts on the overall foundation of the two revenue sports. Boo hasn't commented publicly. You think he has a plan to raise the bar in football and basketball? Just seems like we can't accomplish or win anything. Quick answer is I think the investment he's putting into the football program is kind of seen with his staff. I think these guys are getting paid well. This is a little bit higher than we've seen before. I gotta hope that after this basketball season, we'll have a little bit more exposure to Boo and what he's thinking and all that stuff. But yeah, it's hard to answer that. The overall foundation, I think, is pretty good.
He just got Dave a bunch of money to go get other coaches. Like, I think he was smart about it. It wasn't like anything out of control. And if, like say next year or the year after that tail spins out, he's got an exit ramp. Yeah, it'd just be nice to see like what the grand picture is.
Yeah. WM Dietrich asks, was thinking about this the other day. Yao did a great job with the facility renovations and upgrades. What's left on that list for Boo? Baseball needs some help, but most other facilities seem to be in good shape now. It's for football, especially, it's an arms race. You just have to be constantly improving. And we've talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago about how the stadium experience at Carter Finley really needs a lot of help. Concessions and technology and all that stuff just needs to be improved right now because the game day experience is a C, right? And I think you need to be better there. I think that's probably to me, it's the most important. I mean, I like baseball and all, but I don't think that's super high on the list as far as getting attention.
I hate to say it, but like, what's the ROI on having a good baseball program when you have a good football and basketball an established football and basketball program, right? Like, we're not UNC Wilmington or ECU or UNC. Who is it out there? Coastal? No.
Coastal. The Chanticleers. They won a couple of years ago.
Like, for those kind of schools, it makes complete sense because that's a place where you can get an edge because your academic standards are different and baseball players aren't the smartest. And I'm sorry for all the baseball players I offended, but I played baseball with a lot of you and you're dumb. No, like, I mean, it's just... I've never understood the obsession with NC State fans and baseball. I mean, maybe it's just because, like, I don't know, growing up in North Carolina, like, baseball was pretty big for a state that doesn't have a pro team. But like, what's the point in investing in that further to me? Elliott Avon isn't getting better. I said it.
Ooh.
I said it. We're like ranked 16th? I mean, it's like every damn year it's the same thing. And like, that's the thing. Is like, if you get the same thing no matter what, and you're just good enough to be relevant, then like, why invest more? I can totally understand that argument. The stadium experience really needs to improve. People complain about that all the time. I mean, it's just the same equation over and over. It's like, if you haven't been going and tailgating at football games for 10, 15, 20 years, it's really hard to get people to leave their couches, leave their homes. People are more exhausted than ever, man. The economy is hard on some people, and it's just hard. It's hard to drive 2 or 3 hours one way and go there, chill, have fun, and then come back. It's asking a lot. And if you're not really good at football, it just makes it difficult.
So let me ask you this question. If you had a blank slate, like no constraints, you could do one thing to any sport, NC State sport, what would it be? Like, what would be improvement or change? What would you make?
I mean, my thing is, I think everything is about the guys behind the scenes and the staff. So if I could like have a large sum of money, I would go get a bunch of analysts and people to help with recruiting and like all the stuff behind the football fortresses. That's what Dabo talks about all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you ask Saban and he would be talking openly about it, that's what I'd say. I would invest behind the scenes at football. If I could like triple whatever that budget is, we could be a completely different program.
I mean, I gave you an opportunity. Here's what I would say. Move the men's basketball back to Reynolds. That's what I would do.
Okay.
That would be my one.
Yeah, obviously. I didn't think I could break a 99-year contract or whatever was signed. God.
Dude, just think of all the good parking you could have if you just imploded the PNC Center, added some more spots. God. You could make a nice little.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, I'd love to study the economics of this because I don't know if Debbie actually replied to me or not, but basically she had gone on and said, you know, you do this, you have a smaller seat profile and you got X amount of season ticket holders. How do you adjust for this? Blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, you just need to lottery it out. Like you basically say like, you know, you invest in 3/4 of the games. Like you guys have access to these tickets and then we will, you know, we'll dedicate them out and every 2 or 3 years, like this stuff would rotate. There's ways around it, but man, it just seems like that would be a huge advantage. Huge.
It would be awesome. Yeah. Watching that NIT game there last year versus Lipscomb. I mean, it was a freaking Lipscomb game, and that place was.
Yeah, I would certainly drive down there a lot more to see games in that venue. I mean, like the PNC's nice from like it's just fine.
It's fine,
and it's like I can go have that exact same experience at any other, you know, 16 to 20,000 seat arena. There's nothing special about that place except for hockey. That's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Oh man, hockey's cool, man.
Quick answer. If we could pull the Clemson theoretically and had to go all in on one of our revenue sports, what would it be? We're a football-based podcast. I think we're a football-based fan base. That's a no-brainer question.
Do we get to turn into Clemson? Like we're that damn good? I would say football. Because football, you know, like football gets the clicks, man. Once you get to that tournament at the end of the year, it's all, you know, who knows what can happen. How many questions do we get about football versus basketball? I think that answers everything.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've said it before. Just people really, I think that's just it's the generation that we're in right now, or the time we're in, that football's just more interesting, and the conversation is 365 about football now, and not just us. I mean, you look everywhere else. ESPN talks about football
because they don't
all
want to
year
talk
round.
about UVA,
and yeah, that's true. That's true too. I think that concludes our football portion of this podcast. But yeah, I mean, all in on football. I would just get rid of everything else, but all towards football. Scotty O asked, how about some Skeeball or SEO tips? And I said, these are both in my limited wheelhouse. But also,
there's one at the bottom.
What is one thing? Yeah. What is one thing you think you do better than anyone else? It could be quirky or unique. So I'm going to tie these two together. At one point in my life, I was a LeBron James of Skeeball. Like, I walked around like, there's nobody better than this at me, or nobody better at this than I am. There's some other good players, but I thought consistently, I was like, man, I felt really good that nobody could beat me. And that was a really weird feeling that I had one day. I was like, holy crap. Like, I know it's just really stupid. There's probably like 500 people that play, but I was like, yeah, I'm the best. There's nobody beating me. And so that was it. So the key is, and I'll give you
I need the keys, man. I need the keys because I can't figure this game out. So tell me.
So, all right, there's 3 different kinds of Skeeball machines. There's the old school ones, like the yellow with the little nets. There's the red ones that are beer ball and they spit out tickets for like free drinks and stuff. And then there's the blue ones that are janky plastic and it's called ice ball. Don't ever play ice ball. It's garbage. So if you're playing beer ball, the red ones, which is probably more popular now, and you want to hit the hundreds in the corners, just bank it off the glass. You just aim for the corner. You go from one side, like a diagonal line across. Don't even look at the pocket. Try to hit the glass like 6 inches above that top pocket.
You know, and it'll go in every time because he calls it a pocket.
Whole hundo. I'll start using terms, but I don't think people would appreciate. So
I've got there's a local place here called it's called Bingo and has a lot of old school games, and they've got the net ones. So what do you do for the nets?
Yeah, so the net ones are a little bit different. I had one in my garage for a long time, and if it's a soft net, it's like if it's broken in and they haven't like retied it, then that's again go right at the net and it's just like a catcher's mitt and it just drops in. It doesn't bank it, into the pocket, into the hole. If it's a tighter net, they've retied it. It's a little bit trickier, and you probably have to hit a little bit higher off the net. But yeah, it's the same thing.
So you only go for the hundo, as they say.
It got to a point in our league where they put in rules where you could only do it like once every 9 rounds. It's like bowling. You played 9 rounds. And so we started going for the 50s out the middle, but that's the sucker bet. If you want to play the odds, just go for the 40s. It's right in the middle. It's super easy. Like my 5-year-old can drop 40s.
Well, because you've got home turf advantage, it sounds like you've got at least 2 machines, and then you won't play the real players machine, which is this ice ball. Apparently, is it like a different material on the surface and it changes it, or is it structured differently?
The plastic is like hockey glass plastic on the sides, so you like hit it, it just ricochets off. It's like sounds like a firecracker. Yeah, you can get them. I think that Dave and Buster's has. I think they have both. They have.
Do you put any spin on the ball at all?
Not really. There was a small faction of people that would bank it. I'm talking about banking it like off the ramp. It's a similar concept, trying to bank it into the hundo. But if you bank it off the ramp, you can get that pretty consistently. But no, I mean, I try not to put any kind of spin on it. Try almost throwing knuckleballs. Yeah, there's your Skeeball tips. Your SEO tips: don't overthink it. Get more links. That's all it is. Simple.
Don't link to Cankles. It doesn't get the hits that we thought they would.
Oh God. Yeah, it's inside baseball. Our pre-recording conversation.
Hey, don't tell them. Then it's not inside baseball anymore.
Yeah. All right, Quentin asked, "What's the best flavor ice cream?"
Okay, I've got like 2 paths here, but I really love just salted caramel. It just is like crack for me. And then there was this flavor. I can't seem to find it anymore. Maybe they discontinued it, but Ben & Jerry's had something called like Urban Bourbon that was really good. What's funny is like I'm trying to think back. Like I don't think I've ever had like a Rocky Road, but like as I've gotten older, I've become a lot more of like a foodie. I just like getting weird, different flavors. And I wonder if something like that would tickle my fancy. What's yours?
I had completely forgotten about Ben & Jerry's until you said that. But I used to be a big fish food fan. That was one of my favorites. If we're talking like straight up ice cream, I'd probably default to mint chocolate chip.
Very safe.
So it's really refreshing. My wife, though, has started making Nutella ice cream. So it's like hazelnut chocolate flavored. It is better than anything you've ever had.
How does she make it?
I like make her all the time. It's heavy cream and Nutella and an ice cream maker.
I forget that there's actual ice cream makers. I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, man, she likes in there just like swirling it all day and like really going for it.
No, It's so good. That's
See,
probably my favorite
I
at the
don't know if
moment.
this.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
this is
fish food used to
so
be my
the
jam.
urban bourbon is burnt caramel ice cream with almonds, fudge flakes, and bourbon caramel swirls. Treat yourself to a caramel concoction that's bold, toasty, and bourbon swirled with lots of nuts and fudge for fun.
Yeah. Only problem with Ben and Jerry's is they bring their politics into their ice
no,
cream.
hold on. We're not going to do this. This is going to be, we're going to have a politics free podcast, but we'll take this off the air.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not bringing it up, but they just tweet stupid things. And I'm just like, whether
you gotta let political Twitter not get you riled up. I feel like that gets you a little more frosty than you need to be.
I don't think it does. No, I don't engage with it. I think it's stupid. I think people should. I think most people's opinions on it are ill-informed.
That's what I'm saying. I think it bothers you. You don't comment per se or whatever, but there's been a couple times you've mentioned it, and I've been like, "Oh, Evan, this news cycle at all times probably has to infuriate you just because you're getting it from all sides." And I'm just like, I don't think it's good for him.
I like to keep my NC State Twitter feed very NC State focused, and then when it crosses over, it bothers me.
I can see that
because I don't. Yeah, but yeah, whatever. And the last question: if you could live in a different decade or time period, which one it would be? I've been thinking this one all day.
This is a good question.
I don't know. Right now, it's kind of a shit show, so I wouldn't say that one. But early, I'd say 2000, 2010 in there, iPhone days just coming out. Everything was, of course, I was younger at the time too, so that's probably why I enjoyed that period so much. You have the benefits of technology, but you don't also have all the BS that we have right now. Somebody would say probably the 70s or the 60s, but then you have to be worried about going to war.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Drafted. If you have a desire to, I mean, it's if you're gonna be in a war, you gotta be in World War II, so you can go hang out with the French babes. I get it. Now I would say to me, I think the 80s actually is kind of a really interesting decade. I always thought the music is bonkers. There's so many opportunities to go see incredible experiences. You could go in the 80s, you could go see Eddie Murphy. You know what I mean? It's that arena decade, but at the same time too, there's a bunch of weird coming from it because you're just coming out of the 70s, and it seems like there's a lot of creativity going on. The 80s, I think, probably got a weird rap because it was just such a weird time. But when I think back on it, I was born in the 80s, but obviously I didn't get to experience it the same way. But you get Nintendo, man. You get there's so many interesting technology advances right then that today I think are kind of really unique. If I was gonna pick if it was an era or way far back, boy, how far would I go? Oh man, I just think being in that Renaissance era would just be interesting. I'd just be curious if I would be smart enough to be wow, this is beautiful art, or if I'd just be these guys are a bunch of fruitcakes. What's wrong with this place? We used to just do.
Oh, that's for sure what I would say. Yeah.
I'd be Evan, you just really have to open your mind to what they're doing here. I mean, look at the depth that they're displaying.
Shut up. Give me a beer.
It would be it wouldn't be. It would be an ale or a mead, probably.
Yeah, an ale.
I don't know. Roman times. Yeah. I loved Roman history. If I had to go really far back, it would be terrible, but at the same time, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And you die when you're 30. You'd have the
you'd
plague.
Be totally ripped because you're just constantly working in the fields, man.
What are you, Spartacus?
Yeah. It would be terrible to be.
The problem with the 80s,
in the Roman era and not be a Roman. Yeah. Oh jeez, that went poorly.
The problem with, well, I'm going to back up. I always think about how interesting it would be, like Lewis and Clark, like just setting across
Yeah.
the terrain here, like, and nobody else had done
The
it.
Indians had
I mean,
done
that,
it. Okay.
well, no real
Whoa!
people had done it.
Oh, we gotta edit that out.
No, I mean, just I wonder what it be
Yeah.
like to be able to explore someplace on Earth that people haven't really documented or hadn't really been, settled. And I think that's, to me, that's wild to think about.
Did you watch
I always
Deadwood?
wonder. Go ahead.
Would you have liked
yeah.
to live in the Deadwood setting? Or is that too? So that's
not really
too established from what you're saying there.
Yeah, I think that's more. That's, I mean, if you look at the historic time period of that show, it was right in between, the transition to the industrial age. And it's very much the end of the gold rush kind of deal. I think, but even before that, where it's just, I don't know, nothing, no place, nobody's ever been there before. I think that's, to me,
it would
that's
be
just
fascinating, but also
about.
terrifying. I feel like, just because I think having enough knowledge of, I don't know, just, I mean, it just seems like you could just take the wrong step and run into the wrong person, and it's just a bad end. But I mean, I just constantly think, like, what would it be like to see America where it's just like the nature of America? It would just be fascinating to me, right? I mean, I think people kind of forget, like, how, if everything went away for a little while, like, this place could be just absolutely overrun and incredible with forests and nature, and, like, I love fishing and stuff like that. So, like, I always think about what you're saying, and it's just like, yeah, to get there and see something for the first time, to be a French fur trapper who hadn't seen women in so long that when you see the Grand Tetons, you name them the Grand Tetons because they look like two giant breasts over the horizon. Like, I get it. I got an F on a report because I put that in there, and the guy thought I was making it up, and I was like, dude, I just came from the Grand Tetons, and this is a real story. So, yeah,
that's amazing. The thing about the 80s, what I was going to say is, there's been no place, and this is factual, no place in the history of time where everybody has been closer to the brink of mass destruction.
Yeah.
I mean, with the Cold War, I mean, there was real threats that nuclear bombs were going to be dropped. Like, they were going to fire missiles from Cuba. I mean, all this stuff, like, it was, right now we have issues and we have terrorism and stuff like that. We're talking about mass destruction, and it was very, very close. And if you ever read about that time period and read about the Cold War, it's like, holy cow, this is like, we're lucky to be here right now. But nobody knew about it because there was no coverage.
I mean, could you imagine the 24/7 news cycle then? I mean, it would. I mean, the levels of depression and anxiety would be just fascinating to see, and see if it kind of parallels at all with, like, how. Oh man, this podcast has gone way down a different rabbit hole. That's funny. Yeah, I always, that is something that is constantly overlooked about the 80s. Also, which makes me think of, just thinking of the Cold War, a great movie to go see, if it ever comes on a streaming service, is Atomic Blonde. Charlize. Oh, you gotta watch it, man. It is like, I mean, first off, I love, like, the John Wick era, like, of action, and seeing Charlize do it is incredible. And it's just great how the 80s in Berlin is established. Like, it's just really fascinating watch. I recommend it to anyone who's curious about history, or just likes action. And it's a really good story. That is all I'll say.
Yeah, what I was going to recommend on that same line, in the 80s, It's more about the technology side of it, but it was a TV show on ABC called *Halt and Catch Fire*, and it was fantastic. It was so good. It's guy like it's loosely like Steve Jobs ish. I think that's kind of what they were hinting at, but it's like the rise of Netscape Navigator and all this stuff, and the computers and the supercomputers, and the rise of the PC. And oh man, it was
I've heard
really
the
good.
second
Really
season
well
is really good as well. Like it improved. It's one of the shows that actually gets better as it keeps going.
Yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend that show. It was super good. Yeah. Very much 80s. I'm like, where do you find all these cars?
Oh man, yeah. Well, collectors, man, that's the one thing you can always guarantee is someone's gonna have cars.
Well, they're all fakes. Do you ever see the like behind the scenes, and they take like Camrys and they just mold,
man. Why you gotta ruin it for me? Oh,
I'm just ruining it for you. They just mold a 1980s Oldsmobile
I
shell.
just thought someone had like a beautiful Buick LeSabre that they were just holding on to, you know.
On that note, I'm gonna go watch the last season of Bosch.
Is that show good?
I gotta finish that show. Oh my gosh, real good. It's on season 5.
We're looking for new shows to add on and watch now. Okay, yeah,
highly
put that on
recommend
the list. I've heard that a couple times, but I wasn't sure if it was legitimate or not. It's like a detective story,
no, it's
right?
legit.
Or something like that. Okay,
it's a detective story. Yeah. It's awesome.
If people have film recommendations or TV show recommendations, I'll take them on next week's podcast.
Yeah, at some point, I'm going to splinter this podcast out until it's actually about NC State sports, and there's another podcast where maybe we can talk about BS, so we don't end up with hour and a half rants of.
Personally, for me, like I love listening to a podcast that is, you know, this is our thing. This is we stick to it. But I think it's a lot more interesting when two people are kind of just shooting the breeze and talking about the interesting stuff at the end of it. So, you know, if you don't like it, you can just cut off basically after we stop talking about football because, you know, that's how this is broken up now.
Right. We'd have to actually do some research if I was going to make this into, I'd have to actually pay attention. All right. That's all I got. If you made it this far, thanks. I'm sorry.
Next week's episode. Oh, can you do the serial music going out?
Yeah, sure. Hold on.
Yes.
Oh, wrong one. There we go.
Hold on.
Come on, you can do it.
Boom. And so, as another episode concludes, this time as champions, the Wolfpack go 80-63 into this cold, dark night. And they say, bring it on, UVA. Oh, wait, Clemson first. On next week's episode, you'll hear us talk about losing to Clemson again.
I thought you knew that in your ASMR voice. All right, we're out of here. Thanks for listening. Go Pack.